Hi there, thank you for tuning in and welcome back to the channel. My name is Sheyi and today we're talking about a very interesting and serious topic, especially for those who are looking at immigration, whether to Canada or even to any other country. So things have been a little bit bumpy with Canada immigration, and despite how hopeful we are that things will get back, there are some people who have expressed an interest in moving to European countries. And that's absolutely great. However, even though Canada is making adjustments to its immigration policies, some European countries have taken things much further. They are outright banning immigrants. Yes, so as in banning, no immigrants allowed. Countries like Poland, Lithuania, and Italy have put up serious walls against immigrants, as it's a stark contrast to what we're seeing in Canada. But does that mean that European countries are not a good option for you? And are there any lessons that Canada could learn from these European nations? Let us find out together. So, it's no longer news that the Canada government has made announcements about reducing the number of temporary immigrants, mainly to balance economic and housing concerns. And on November 1st, we're going to see even more Canada immigration announcements. So stay tuned for that. But compared to some of these European nations, Canada's approach is still pretty open. Canada is still kind. Canada is still humane, unlike some of these countries. So today we're going to explore 7 European countries that have completely shut the door on immigrants. Like they don't want immigrants at all. And we will look at what that means for Canada and for you, especially if you are considering other countries to immigrate to. Listen very carefully because I want you to tell me which country you think has the strictest immigration policy. Okay? Great. Now let's dive right in. Now, this is in no particular order. Okay? At number 1 is Lithuania. I never know how to pronounce the name of this country. Lithuania. This is a small country with a population of under 2.7 million. It has gone all out to block immigration. Back in 2021, they faced an influx of immigrants from Belarus, which they felt was an intentional pressure tactic by the Belarusian government. So what did they do? They declared a state of emergency and they began building a wall, like a literal wall, along their border with Belarus. By the end of 2022, 85% of that wall was already completed. And it doesn't stop there. They've implemented a controversial pushback policy, which basically means that immigrants are turned away at the border without even being able to apply for asylum. If you think that Canada's immigration policies are strict, you can see that Lithuania is taking it to a whole new level. It's so intense that human rights groups have voiced major concerns, but their government stands firm, arguing that it's necessary to protect national security. Now, as someone who lives in Canada, I can't help but be grateful that Canada has not gone that route. Next up is the Czech Republic, a country of about 10.5 million. The Czech Republic has been vocal about not wanting to take in immigrants, especially since the 2015 European migrant crisis. The European Union had a relocation plan where member countries were supposed to accept asylum seekers. Czech Republic accepted only 12. Yes, 12 people out of 1,600 that they were supposed to take in by 2020. Why? Well, their government claims it's about national security and preserving cultural identity. They've tightened their borders, sped up deportations, and made it really impossible for asylum seekers to stay. In fact, by 2023, the number of asylum seekers had dropped to just over 8,000. It's almost the polar opposite of Canada, where immigration is still seen as a tool for economic growth. And this brings something to my mind. Do you think Canada's open immigration policy could backfire in the long run? For example, could it affect national security and the cultural identity of Canada? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Now, Italy is next, and Italy is an interesting case. With its long Mediterranean coastline, it's been a gateway for migrants coming from North Africa. But under the leadership of Giorgia Meloni and her Brothers of Italy party, the country has slammed the door shut on most migrants. In 2023, Italy put in place some of the strictest immigration laws that we've seen, drastically reducing the number of migrants arriving by boat. They even cut deals with Libya to stop migrants before they even leave the shore. On top of that, they've limited who can even apply for asylum, and they've started heavily fining NGOs that help rescue migrants at sea. This all sounds very extreme, but Italy sees this as defending their borders. I can't help but compare this to Canada, where there's still an emphasis on humanitarian aid and accepting refugees, despite recent cuts in temporary immigration numbers. But if the strain on housing and jobs gets worse here, Canada may need to get a little bit creative with immigration. Number 4 is Austria with a population of 9 million. Austria has been one of the most vocal European countries against immigration since 2015. Led by the Austrian People's Party, they've made it clear that they are not here for mass immigration. In fact, by 2024, Austria had reduced asylum applications by over 60%. They've used everything from drones to facial recognition software to monitoring their borders. It's almost like something out of a sci-fi movie. Austria's argument is that they simply don't have the infrastructure to handle more people. At number 5 is Denmark. Denmark has long been known for its tough stance on immigration, but it's gotten even stricter this year. They've reduced social benefits for refugees and even started outsourcing asylum applications to countries like Rwanda. Yeah, so they are literally sending people to Rwanda while their asylum claims are being processed. The government says this is all to protect the welfare state and ensure that Denmark remains Danish. The number of asylum applications in Denmark dropped to less than 1,500 in 2023. What's interesting is how they've managed to reduce immigration without completely closing their doors, unlike some of the other countries on this list. And with Canada experiencing such an influx of asylum seekers, do you think that Canada could adopt a similar approach where we balance humanitarian aid with stricter controls? Would you support something like that? Let me know in the comments. Poland is at number 6. Poland has a population of nearly 38 million and has constantly opposed large-scale immigration. Poland rejected the EU's refugee relocation plan back in 2015, and since then, they've doubled down on keeping migrants out. They see it as a way of preserving their Christian identity. In 2022, Poland took it even further by strengthening border controls and expediting deportations. Their leaders argue it's about protecting national security and maintaining their cultural fabric. It's clear that Poland is playing a long game of self-preservation. And then last but certainly not the least is Hungary. Hungary has perhaps the strictest anti-immigration policies in Europe. They've built a border fence. They've passed laws to jail people who help asylum seekers. They've introduced measures that make it virtually impossible for anyone to seek asylum. Their Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, has made it clear that Hungary doesn't want migrants, especially non-European ones. Hungary's policies are focused on preserving Hungarian culture and keeping out what they see as threats to their way of life. Now, many people have applauded these countries for what they are doing, with slogans like Europe for Europeans, Africa for Africans, Middle East for Middle Easterns, and Asia for Asians. That's the way God made it. Stay in your own country, fix your country, and stay there. Others have called these countries smart, and they are even saying that Canada needs to do these things as well. Now, Canada could never pull off something like this without causing international uproar. But could there be a middle ground? Should Canada continue to welcome immigrants at the current rates, or is there something to be learned from all these countries' approach? Now, let's look at Canada's perspective. But before we do that, tell me, which of these countries do you think has the harshest immigration policies? Tell us your opinion in the comments below. Now, back to Canada's perspective. Canada is still one of the most welcoming countries for immigrants, even though we're starting to see changes in our immigration policies. There are pros and cons to both sides. On the one hand, we want to remain an open and diverse society. On the other hand, there's legitimate concern about housing, jobs, and infrastructure. So, what do you think? Should Canada be worried about the strain that immigration might be putting on the country's resources? Or should we just continue to embrace new arrivals as we always have? I want you to think very objectively about your answer and leave it in the comments. Now, all in all, these European countries have taken drastic steps to control immigration, some to the point of outright bans. But Canada, while adjusting its policies, still maintains a much more open approach. We'll have to wait and see how things develop. But one thing is for sure, immigration will remain a hot topic, not just in Canada, but in so many European countries because there's a lot of people that are wanting to immigrate. In this video here, I talked about some countries you should not immigrate to. Watch it next. I'll catch you in my next video.